It was death from above, not even a whistle.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 3 of Sovereign Artsakh. Daniel and I are going to be, we're going to talk about Artsakh more in detail in some of the conflict that's been going on. Daniel, how are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on again today. It's great to be part of the team.
Well, you are welcome, and I think you can't get away. I got you. You're reeled in. You're a part of what we're doing now, and I'm so grateful for you. And you're helping me along my journey with Armenia, Artsakh, all things associated with the first Christian nation. I thank you, brother. Thank you so much. Before we move on, I got to do the programming notes. Please share. Right, that the most important thing is to share this video with another Armenian or a Christian, or anyone that cares about what really matters going on in the world. The best way is word of mouth. Share this video. Think of one person, whoever's watching this. Some of you are regulars. You watch every episode. Some of you, this is the first time you've ever seen it. Right now, there's somebody in your head that's popping in your head. Share this with them. And I encourage everyone to share each week, spread the word. We're just getting started here. This is something we're going to be doing for a while, and you're going to see it change and grow. And I see actually some change already. Your camera, Daniel, you look, I can see you. I can see more resolution, more detail, even without my glasses.
Yeah, it remains to be seen if that's a good thing, but we'll find out as we go along. But yes, I did an upgrade here, so better visuals, and we're tweaking as we go along. We're growing and building every step of the way.
And another note, I did not downgrade my studio. I just happened to be away from my studio. So you upgraded your camera, and I'm like in my car. So that'll happen on occasion. But we have the technology to do this. All right, enough of that. Also subscribe. Please subscribe, again, share, and click there's a bell on YouTube that you can click to remind you. This will be every Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time, but after it airs live, it will be permanently on the interwebs, as they say. So when you think of people to share it with them. We got a lot coming up, and we'll announce those things as they come along. Actually, one little update, sogomontalerian.com is officially live. Last week, if you went there, you wouldn't be able to get to it, but now you can go to sogomontalerian.com, and we'll put that in the link in the description below. And all you'll find right now is just the name Sogomon Talerian. And that is the objective, right? The initial objective, the primary objective, is to get Sogomon Talerian's name out there so that it'll enter their vocabulary. It'll become common knowledge. People look into him and find out who he is and what he did, and that's the goal. So for now, you can go to sogomontalerian.com and just see the spelling of his name. Daniel, so I want to kind of rewind and talk about the name of the channel, the name of the show. I came up with it. It just felt my instincts were that it makes sense, but as maybe I didn't put enough thought into it. Is Sovereign Artsakh? What do you think of that name for the show and the channel?
I think it's a very apt and appropriate name when you think about the plight of the Armenians of Artsakh, all that they've been through from 1991 when they declared their independence. It was all about their sovereignty, their freedom, their independence, their recognition as a people, as a nation. And now, even after more than 100,000 Armenians from Artsakh had to flee for their lives because of the ethnic cleansing from Azerbaijan, even now, more so today, there's this call for sovereignty for the Armenians of Artsakh. So we need to keep this issue in the forefront, and the idea, the vision of a sovereign Artsakh is very real and very relevant today.
Okay, good. That was my instinct. as a creative, my job in Hollywood as a creative, ideas occur to me. Doesn't mean every idea I have is a good one or a right one to follow through on, but I just felt right. So I went with it, Sovereign Artsakh, because, in my cursory understanding of the history of Armenia in general, it's the 4,000, 5,000 year old culture, which means there's artifacts from millennia ago that essentially are the evidence, right? It's the proof that they're indigenous, right? This is their land. This is where they've been. They've always been here. They've never not been here. And then these other countries come in, the Ottoman or the Romans and the Byzantines and the Ottomans come in and they sweep through. But the indigenous people are just still there, no matter what the borders are, right? There's lines that get drawn by other people. And that happened in 1918, I guess, right? With Stalin. And he decides, okay, we're going to carve this up. We're going to call this that. We're going to call that that. And this is going to be a line. And he draws. And so he draws this line, right next to Armenia. And then there's this place called Azerbaijan all of a sudden. And as I was looking and understanding and even going there.
By the way, before that.
Say again?
Before 1918, Azerbaijan didn't exist. So that's very important to make that point when people are trying to say that's Azeri land. Well, Coca-Cola is older than Azerbaijan is.
Right. And that's, saying that, some people are like, that's inflammatory or you're racist or it's like people will make these nonsensical arguments like, no.
Inflammatory. Sometimes you say things that are true and it's going to inflame people, but they need to be said.
Right. And that's the nature of truth. Jesus Christ himself said, I did not come to bring peace, but a sword, right? What's that sword? It's the sword of truth. It's the truth that cuts. And some people who are on the wrong side of the truth get cut, right? And so the danger of telling the truth. But it was just baffling to me. I'm like, wait a minute. How can we defend a nation created by Stalin? Right. Let's not go in that direction, but that was really eye-opening for me as a Westerner, right? A person that's completely oblivious. You've gotten one story from your public school education and, to heck with anything else that matters in the world. And this is the first Christian nation, right? This is ancient Christendom. This is where it all started. Mount Ararat is the national symbol of Armenia, right? So understanding there's this place called, I was confused at first, Nagorno-Karabakh and Artsakh. I'm like, okay, it's the same place, just obviously the different places will call it, your Azeris will call it Nagorno-Karabakh and the United Nations will call it Nagorno-Karabakh region, but really it's this ancient land of Artsakh, a distinct people group that are Armenian ethnically. And Stalin could have made Armenia bigger and drawn the line over around Artsakh and Nagorno-Karabakh, but he didn't. And so
there's a reason for that way. History will show that Stalin did these things to reduce the influence of ethnic groups. So he wanted to take land away from Armenia to reduce their ethnic identity so that people would be Soviet as opposed to Armenian or some other or Georgian or something else. So by carving that off of Armenia, it weakens their national identity, or so he envisioned. But all it did was delay and create a conflict later on with the war in Artsakh, and now what has happened over the last 30 years.
So, speaking of the last 30 years, we're going to watch a clip of an excerpt of an interview that my historian did with an American, a U.S. Major General who's very, very familiar with the scenario in Armenia, but also Artsakh in particular. But before we go to that, I just want to give a brief outline for anybody out there that has no idea the history of this conflict. Just going back to World War I, Stalin carves out Armenia and Azerbaijan and Turkey, and the goal of the Ottoman Empire was, well, in World War I, they were taking advantage of the the conflict in the West to fulfill their nationalistic ambitions, I guess. Their pan-Turanism is the term for the ethnic purity of the Turkish or the Turkic peoples. And so Azeris or Azerbaijanis are Turks. And I mean, this is not inflammatory. Of course it is. Azerbaijan is the lapdog of Turkey. That's one of the things that I've come to use as a phrase is they have one goal. They have unity, right? Ultimately, they want it to be one nation, Turkey and Azerbaijan with no Armenia in the middle, just one from the Mediterranean to the Caspian Sea.
That's the whole point right there. They don't want peace with Armenia. They want Armenia to disappear. They perceive Armenia and Armenians in Armenia and Artsakh as being in the way. And they want to get them out of the way by any means necessary to take that land that doesn't belong to them, but they are saying that it does. And they try to legitimize their claim by rewriting history and ignoring the fact that you have historians from around the world who testify to the fact that this land in Armenia and Artsakh is historic Armenian land, just from the virtue of archaeology, when you can see churches that have been there for hundreds and hundreds of years, long before Azerbaijan was even a word. Armenians were there, were living there. So Armenians have the historical claim and the relevance and the proof that this is historically their land. It's Armenian land. There's no doubt about it.
No doubt about it. From your academic, your historian, like people that look at the world rationally, that can analyze all the different factors, would come to a unanimous agreement that, oh yeah, this is an ancient culture, this is an ancient land, those people belong here, and they've been removed from their indigenous homeland, right? That's irrefutable. However, the power dynamics are what is shifting or what has been happening. So you have a Sovietized people, right? The Armenians become less culturally Armenian and more culturally or kind of brainwashed into a Soviet style of thinking. And then when the fall of the Soviet Union happens, these dynamics, these relationships with these former Soviet states starts to change. And in the late 80s, early 90s, when all that's happening, Armenia and Azerbaijan were kind of on a level footing. Armenia had, it seems, had superiority in, resolve and strategy, and they were the winners of that initial conflict, right? Armenia was triumphant militarily against Azerbaijan.
Right.
Fast forward in the 30 years since, Azerbaijan discovers oil reserves in the Caspian Sea and becomes an oil-rich nation with a seaport, whereas Armenia is landlocked and landlocked with, you've got Georgia and technically Russia to the north. You've got Turkey, a hostile nation to the west. You've got Azerbaijan, a hostile nation to the east, and a friend of Armenia to the south named Iran, which is an enemy of the United States, right? So Armenia is in this just between a rock and a hard place, and just persisting and existing, and I believe by the grace of God. And then in 2020, Azerbaijan has refortified their military, their arsenal, and I want to go to this major general. We'll cut to this clip here in a second. And let me just intro and describe who he is. He's a major general. He's retired, and there's a longer video. We'll put a link in the description below to the longer video. It's a more than an hour-long interview, and these excerpts are taken from an even shorter cut down. We'll put links if you want to go listen to his detailing, but he went to Artsakh as a consultant. He's retired, went as a consultant to assess Armenia and Artsakh's readiness, their military readiness. And he told them, you guys need to do this, you need to do that, because if you're going to face a modern conflict, I think you're ill-equipped. So this was some advice he had given prior to the Artsakh War in 2020. So what you're about to see is just a few excerpts of him explaining what happened. And to, spoiler alert, Azerbaijan had advanced military, they had invested in the most high-tech drone warfare, whereas Artsakh was still using like trench warfare. So let's cut to that clip right now.
There was no really military reflection, at least as far as I can see, or at least a strategy or doctrine put forth by the Armenian army to combat what essentially became the leading weapon for the Azeris in this emerging conflict. But this is at least the manner in which the Armenian Artsakh forces defended. This was very similar to trench warfare in the First World War. The moment that you get locked in your trenches, you have basically said, that's as far as I'm going to go, and you can never really hurt the enemy. The Azeris, with the assistance of Turkey and Israel, outfitted their army, basically upgraded their warfighting capabilities through the acquisition of both electronic warfare systems and drones. It was death from above, not even a whistle, where trench positions held by Artsakh Armenian soldiers were completely destroyed by drones. Did the Armenian forces hamstring themselves by basically fighting like wars were fought in the First World War with trench warfare?
So Daniel, you said you were in Armenia during this war. Can you maybe, did you see any of this footage? Were you aware of what was going on at the time?
Yeah, I was. And, I saw a lot of the news reports as the news was coming in, the state of the war. And it was very clear with the use of the drones that they purchased from Israel, of all places, that was the deciding factor. You had drones that could strike from above, and in one drone could take out 50 Armenian soldiers. And how do you combat that? With the equipment that they had at the time, they were, they were slaughtered. I mean, it was a terrible, tragic situation. And there were also allegations and evidence that that the Azeris were using some illegal weapons, by the burning of forests through chemicals. There was strong evidence to indicate that, and those were banned. Banned around the world. They were forbidden to use, and so they. There are rules in war. You have things called the Geneva Convention, and there are rules on how you conduct the war. And there were very strong allegations that they were committing a lot of atrocities and war crimes, on top of the fact that they were using these drones.
Yes, and based on the interview with Major General Mark McCarley, I think is his name. That interview happened 8 days after the ceasefire in November of 2020. And so it was all fresh. He gave that interview, and then I found that footage to kind of emphasize and highlight the points he was making. I mean, there's one clip there where you're looking down on a trench of some Armenians, and then poof, they had no idea. See, this is the disparity of force, right? This is what we're like. it was a slaughter. And even to say that while it was happening within Armenia and Artsakh, it's like, you're anti-patriotic, you think we're losing. But it's like that conflict is used in, well, in military academies or in advanced military enclaves around the world as a case study for how war is now going to be fought. That trench warfare stuff is a thing of the past. If you are not investing in drone and anti-drone technologies, they can send a drone up there. There's not a man in that drone, and it can drop a bomb, like you said, on a squadron of 50 guys, and then go back and pick up some more bombs. And the enemy has lost nothing, right? The Azeris have lost nothing except a bomb that they dropped, whereas the Armenians, the Artsakhis, were losing their the next generation, right? The fighting force. And so it was a very difficult thing to go through and witness, but it's not over. And that's part of the reason we're starting this, right? You and I are doing this on a weekly basis, and we're going to be putting more content up. We need the world, especially in we're in a new world right now. We just inaugurated a brand new president of the United States, and I am going to be taking the steps to reach out to whoever it is to draw attention. And I know it's on his radar. I know like Trump had put something on Truth Social prior to the election that he talked about Armenia and Artsakh. And so there's somebody that's in his ear. I want to track that person down, and I want to bring awareness. So like I said, share this video, subscribe and share. And if you think of somebody else, share it with them. I believe things are going to turn around. But why do you think the Armenians did not invest or were not able to keep up with military technology? Any guesses? I don't want to put you on the spot, but
I don't really know the answer to that. I'm not privy to what happens behind the scenes, but one thing that I think is worth saying, that in spite of everything that happened, I've been to Armenia 24 times. I've been to Artsakh twice, and I can tell you the Armenians are peaceful people. They are artists. They are painters. They are composers and musicians. They are dancers. They are not only a peaceful people, they are a very warm-hearted people. They desire peaceful coexistence with their neighbors. Having said that, Armenians have been wronged. What happened is wrong. And I feel compelled, as someone who's not Armenian by birth, I call myself Armenian by choice, and also a Christian, to speak out for the Armenian people, whether in Armenia or in Artsakh or in the diaspora. Armenians have endured centuries and centuries of hardship. And now what happened in Artsakh, we need to be shouting from the rooftops that something needs to be done to help the Armenians from Artsakh to be able to return to their homeland and have that land as their own again. It is their land. It is their right. They deserve it. And as long as I have breath, I will be shouting that truth.
You and me both, brother. And it's I was going to say it's like a pet project of mine, but it's not a pet project. It's central to what I'm doing, right? The Soghomon Tehlirian story is the Armenian story, right? He embodies the entire culture by telling his story. You're telling the story of an entire people group, and this is the continuation, right? This is not a new thing. This is not a new genocide that's happening. People don't understand what the word genocide means. They got a vague idea. They think it's one thing, but it's much more pervasive. And I've said it before, and I'll say it over and over again. Genocide is the attempted erasure that a people group ever existed. It's not just trying to to wipe them off the face of the earth right now. It's eliminating the mention of them from the history books. It's eliminating the sacred monuments and relics. It's rewriting a history and putting another name. This wasn't Armenian, it was some other culture, right? Literally. And so that's what's happening. Artsakh is an historic Armenian enclave that is being attempted to be erased right now. A year and a half ago, more than 100,000 Armenians who've been in that land there for generations and generations and generations were removed for the first time. This is genocide under our noses, unfolding right now. So there's an urgency to this. We are not going away. We're only ramping up. We're going to take all of our resources. And as I begin to share the name Soghomon Tehlirian, Artsakh is going to be at the tip of my tongue the whole time. I want to, this just occurred to me. I'm going to do a little commercial. This is an unsolicited commercial, but there is a movie that's hitting theaters. I believe it's this weekend. I know that there's some screenings in Glendale. I'm going to one, a movie called Between Borders. Have you heard of this movie, Daniel?
I've heard the name, but I don't know that much about it yet.
So Between Borders is an independently produced film that screened, its premiere screening was at the Armenian Film Festival, the second annual Armenian Film Festival, just this past September. And I'm so glad I saw it. Armin and Mary, the couple that are Armenian Film Society that have established the Armenian Film Festival, they're doing incredible work. They're exhibiting important Armenian films. A lot of they do some short documentaries and full-length documentaries about Artsakh. So some of the most touching, impactful content that's fresh, that's coming out right now. And they were able to get a kind of an advanced screening. The edit wasn't even done, and the filmmakers came for this film. It's not a documentary. It's a dramatic feature, and it's made by Christians, non-Armenian Christians. And there's only one of the actors that I know of, an actress, and she's incredible, that's Armenian. There's like some non-Armenians play the Armenian roles, but it's a it's a non-Armenian Christian production company and team that put this film together, and it's incredible. It's a Christian message, and you'll feel, if you're not a Christian and you see it, you might feel a little bit preached to, but set that aside. It does have a very clear message at the end, but it's a true story, well acted, and on a shoestring budget, so well made. I was so happy that Armin was able to get that at the film festival, and now they're premiering it. It's getting a limited release. So I encourage Between Borders, anybody watching this, find out if it's playing near you just this weekend, and if it gets enough interest, they'll get a more broad distribution of it. So Between Borders, it's in summary, it's a family that were stuck in Baku, which is the capital of Azerbaijan, in a hostile time, and they were escaping to America, and they were between borders. They were escaping as refugees from a war-torn, hostile nation, and the United States was saying, really? Are you really escaping war-torn? Right? This ambivalence of the Americans, like, everybody wants to come to America. Are you really? It's just this incredible, dramatic, true story. And there, as an unexpected little commercial. All right, I think we're about out of time, Daniel. Any final thoughts before I do our official sign-off?
Just what I said before about Armenians being peaceful people. Having said that, I think, there's this rumbling from some quarters saying that, why is Armenia buying weapons now? Some are calling them fascist because they're buying weapons from other countries. Armenia has every right to defend itself, has every right to protect and defend its citizens. And I applaud and support Armenia for now building up their military so that they can defend themselves against hostile neighbors. And they've got hostile neighbors from both sides. So I think, yes, Armenians are peaceful. They want peace, but there is peace through strength as well, and not being intimidated by bullies. In Azerbaijan, they're a bully. And sometimes the only way to beat back a bully is to stand up to them. And so we should support Armenia in this time when their very existence is being threatened.
It's amazing to even hear you say that the first Christian nation that still has geographic territory, right? That's the mind-boggling thing, that Christians, non-Armenian Christians, need to grasp this. The first Christian nation, an ancient nation, still has a sliver of geographic territory that's ever at imminent threat. It's imperiled perpetually. We need to be focusing on that instead of Israel, instead of wherever else. We need to be focused on Armenia. All right, I'm going to wrap this up with that thought. Let me just say, make sure you subscribe and share. Send this video. Click the like button, right? That helps it. Spread the word. Go see Beyond Borders. I'll make sure there's a link in the description below. Thank you all. God is in control.